Let me start the 40th session of Secrets of Spirituality. Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest scientists of the 20th century, just told this sentence: the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of existence. But the scientists are yet to understand whatever Nikola Tesla told. As scientific inventions or discoveries turned into technical designs or technical manufacturing or technological manufacturing, and when technology was used for many wrong, selfish purposes of the human beings, and gradually when technology itself has become a business nowadays, technology is basically a marketing trend, or anything that is invented or discovered in technology also, that itself is being projected as a means of finance or as a means of industrial development in the name of business and marketing. How can science begin to study non-physical phenomena? I was given an example earlier about the discoveries done by Kirlian and Korotkov. Almost a century before, Kirlian made a remarkable discovery about the life force or prana. But even today, even after about a century, even today, the modern scientific community is yet to understand what is prana. So, if the scientists begin to study non-physical phenomena, only then they will understand the hidden secrets of life. And that is when I should repeat whatever Nikola Tesla said: it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of existence. But that one decade, when that is going to happen, neither Tesla knew nor we know. One particular scientist was working in his lab and his marriage was fixed. And on that particular day of marriage, everybody was in the marriage hall except this particular bridegroom. And they were frantically searching for the bridegroom. And finally, they came back to the bridegroom's house, and there also they searched. And then they went into the lab where this particular scientist himself was a bridegroom. He was experimenting the lab itself. Now the people who came in search of him, they directly asked him, "Don't you remember that today is your marriage day?" And the person told, "Yes, I remember." Then they told, "They're all waiting there in the marriage hall for your marriage and you are still not there." Then the person told, "I was conducting this experiment. Now this experiment will be over in a few minutes or in a few hours. I thought, let me complete this experiment, then let me come to the marriage hall." And the people laughed at him. People said, "All others are waiting for your marriage and you are busy conducting this experiment. You come there, finish your marriage and then come back and conduct your experiment. Otherwise we cannot wait any longer." Then that person stopped this experimentation for half. Then he went back to his marriage hall. After the marriage was completed, again he came back to the lab and he completed the experiment. That was the dedication of a scientist. The name of the scientist was Louis Pasteur. So that was the dedication of the previous century scientists. But in the present century, science and technology is being utilized more for making money. More of money, more of turnover, more of products, more of mechanical life. So if science is turning into something which is more material, when will these people really try to study non-physical phenomena? I told you the story of Louis Pasteur now. In some other previous session, I had told about Louis Pasteur reading the Bible in the train. In fact, it was not Louis Pasteur reading the Bible in the train. It was Blaise Pascal who was reading Bible in the train. I was confused at that time. But maybe Louis Pasteur also would have studied Bible. Nikola Tesla would also have studied Bible. And then they would have understood all the metaphysical or the non-physical phenomena or the paranormal phenomena. But the present generation scientists are yet to understand what is there beyond life, what was there before life. Only when they start studying the spiritual phenomena will they understand about life in a much better way. Then only we can say that there will be a great progress for humanity. Let us wait for that particular 1 decade, whichever Nikola Tesla mentioned. If it happens in this century itself, it is better for the humankind. Or whenever it happens, it is better for the humankind. This is my Paramaguru, Dr. Swami Geetananda Giri. My Guru's Guru is Paramaguru. My Guru's Guru's Guru is a Parameshti Guru. So my Paramaguru Geetananda Giri had told this sentence, which I had mentioned earlier also. It is not the chosen few, it is the few who have chosen. Means God will not choose anybody for that matter. It is the ones who choose to endeavor into the non-physical dimensions or the hidden aspects of life. So it is not the chosen few as some people think. Some people think that God chooses some people and God sends them on this earth. Not that way. God is not a person to send anybody from some other abode of existence. God is the omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, universal, infinite, divine consciousness. In that case, thinking that God is a person is itself is a sign of lack of spiritual knowledge. God will not choose any particular person that way because God has chosen every living being as his own vehicle. Now it is the few who choose, or it is the few who have chosen to delve into the path where the normal people do not go, where the ordinary people do not go. That is where the extraordinary people or the paranormal people tread the path. So it is futile or waste or useless to think that someday somebody will come from somewhere and that somebody will remove all the sufferings of the human beings. Because the cause of suffering for the human beings are human beings themselves. Initially they remain innocent and ignorant. Gradually they lose their innocence. They remain ignorant. The same ignorant people will turn into arrogant people. It is the arrogant people who are causing suffering for themselves and for all the others in the whole of the earth. So nobody will come as such to remove the sufferings or remove the problems of life. Human beings should realize by themselves that life itself is the divine gift and how life can be made better and how we can live better. That way, it is not the chosen few, it is the few who have chosen. Coming back to our main topic of discussion. In this table, 3 types of reproduction are listed. You may think reproduction is only of one type. No. Whatever you think that the reproduction is of one type, that is only of the physical type. Now there is that reincarnation or rebirth, that is that mental type. Then there is one more, spiritual type. Let me explain this. There is a physical type of reproduction which is given the name incarnation. Incarnate. Carnate means flesh. Incarnate means in flesh there is this birth. So in Sanskrita this is called Janma. This is the physical type of reproduction, and the cause for this physical type of reproduction is natural memory, means manas, or the natural mind. In the sense, in the natural mind, there is this memory of Udvijja, Svedaja, Andaja, Jarayuja, Manuja. Means how a seed needs to be sprouted to become a plant or a tree. How a worm will undergo metamorphosis to become a butterfly. How an egg after incubation becomes a bird. This is all part of natural memory. How in the womb itself a spermatozoa will merge with a ovum, and how gradually a human body gets designed and manufactured inside the womb itself. That is natural memory, because that memory is present in nature itself about how to produce the living beings. Now, the means for such physical type of reproduction is the gross body or sthula sharira. Now, worms are hermaphrodites. Later on, separately fishes will be male and female. Separately birds and animals will be male and female. Separately human beings are also male and female. Otherwise, worms are basically hermaphrodites. In case of worms, there is no male and female as such. Which means this is a nature's experiment where to produce more and more of variety, or to have more and more of differentiation between two bodies, a sperm and a worm's concept was implemented by nature or by the Divine Mother with the intention of the Divine Father, so that even if there is a lot of population on this earth, let there be less number of similarity. If there is similarity, it will be difficult to identify. It will be difficult to communicate. So there must be diversity, there must be variety in the physical bodies, in their appearance, in their size, in their shape. That is how male and female bodies were made to copulate together, so that the product which is coming out of the copulation will have the imprints of both of these bodies in one way or the other. You can observe that some children will have the resemblance of the father, some children will have the resemblance of the mother, and some children will have the resemblance of both, which simply indicates that when the physical type of reproduction happens, it is the same imprint of chromosomes or genes. Through the genes, this formula gets slightly modified, and there will be a physical resemblance also, there will be a physical dissimilarity also. That is how male and female bodies are put into a natural memory state where, without their own serious understanding of their own body, they are programmed to have an attraction among each other so as to involve in copulation, and they will become the means for this physical type of reproduction. So, physical type of reproduction is happening through the gross body using the male and female bodies. Now, the beings are basically material beings. That means, for the physical type of reproduction, all the material that is utilized is from the body's dhatu. Dhatu, or the essence of the body. Now, when the lady becomes pregnant, all the essential elements from her own body are going to be utilized inside the uterus for manufacturing the child. So that way, it is basically a material type of reproduction. And it is the material type of reproduction in all other beings also. For example, inside the egg, there is a material that is an essential material. Even though it is yellow and white, even though it is albumin and protein, it is basically the essential material for designing and manufacturing a bird's body inside. Now, from outside, only that female body is incubating the egg. and it is no other material is going inside the egg in any other way. Still, that white and yellow, that itself gradually turns into different types of body parts: wings, beak, legs, eyes, brain, skin. So it is basically a material type of existence, material type of reproduction by using the essential elements. That is called dhatu. And the attachment to this physical body is there only during the physical life. That means it is called as kalantara. Means the beings are born, they live for some time, and they die. When they die, again, through the male and female copulation only, further bodies are born. In general, I used to tell it as Kala Chakra, Kama Chakra, and Karma Chakra. Kala Chakra is the cycle of time. Kama Chakra is the cycle of desire. Karma Chakra is the cycle of activity. And this has been going on. So with the normal beings, not just the human beings, with the normal beings apart from the human beings, it is basically the physical type of reproduction, and the attachment is there only during the physical life. Now coming to the second type of reproduction called mental. What happens with human beings now? Human beings do not want to die, right? Human beings want to have attachment towards the things, whatever they think are their own, right? So human beings, in their own memory, they will have a deeper desire not to die, not to have liberation, and want to experience life again and again. In spite of life having suffering also, still people think they can bear the suffering but not the death. Even when a dying person is interviewed, let us say a dying person seldom dies happily. Even while dying also, if at all the person is asked about what is his last wish, he may again say, I don't want to go away from my family members. I don't want to go away from my properties. I have hard-earned money. I don't want to lose my money also. I don't want to lose my body also, which I want to use my body. And seldom they die with happiness. They always die with sadness. Whenever people are born, they cry subconsciously. But whenever they die, they cry consciously. Because they don't want to die. They want to have an attachment towards life. Now, because in their memory, they have this deeper desire to have body once again. Now, as this has become their habit to keep on remaining attached to their own human type of existence. Now, when the physical body dies, as I have already mentioned, because of the existence of the Panchakosha, even when one kosha stops working, there are other four koshas intact. Maybe later on, next three koshas are intact, due to which the individual memory gets transferred into the natural memory. And the natural memory has its own Kala Chakra, Kama Chakra, Karma Chakra. It has its own cycle of time. It has its own cycle of desires, which are induced into the living bodies. And it has its own cycle of action and reaction. So that is the second type of reproduction that is happening only with the human beings. That is called reincarnation or rebirth. Reincarnation. Carnate means flesh. Re means again. Again into the flesh. In Sanskrita, we call it as Punarjanma also. We call it as Anuvritti also. Anuvritti. To use the yogic term, Patanjali had mentioned Yogaha Chitta Vritti Nirodhaha. Now instead of Nirodha, what is happening? Anu is happening. Instead of restraint of the Vritti happening, it is the following of the Vritti once again is happening. That is called Anuvritti. Now the cause for this mental type of reproduction is the individual memory or buddhi, which means buddhi did not have proper jnana. The intellect did not have the correct knowledge of existence, due to which they get attached to the physical type of existence. And the means for the physical type of reproduction was gross body, the uterus. Now the means for the mental type of reproduction is the subtle body or sukshma sharira. Because the memory from the individual body gets transferred into the nature, that means into the pranamaya kosha, manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha. Chitta or memory has multiple dimensions, as I had mentioned earlier. Memory is not just there in the brain, memory is there everywhere in nature. Now the memory that was in the brain, when it is getting transferred to that of nature or to the subtle body or sukshma sharira, now the subtle body remains as such bound. And when the subtle body remains as bound, subtle body has a deeper attachment to again get into flesh, reincarnation. Now the beings are the human beings here, or Manushya. Only human beings will have this mental type of reproduction or reincarnation, because the other living organisms are neither aware of birth nor aware of death. Even though they also have ahara, nidra, bhaya, maithuna, which is common to all of the moving living beings. Even though all the other beings are also searching for food, taking rest, and they also have the fear of death or fear of pain, fear of existence, and they also are involved in copulation. But all the other living beings except the human beings are neither aware of birth nor aware of death. So they are all into the natural maya, whereas human beings, they have their own social maya along with the natural maya. As long as human beings remain entangled with the social maya, how can they liberate themselves? As long as they have attachment, even after physical death, to the physical existence only. Even when a dying man also does not want to die, he cries at the time of death, thinking that he is leaving his own people. But who are our own people as such? Is it not the recycling of the flesh only always? Is it not carnate, incarnate, reincarnate? Whomever you really call your father or mother or brother or sister, who are they actually? In the spiritual terminology, if you have to say, you call your parents are your parents, you call that they are your mother, they are your father, with the due respect for the Taittiriya Upanishad, which says Matra Devo Bhava Pitra Devo Bhava. Let us respect our parents. But spiritually, when we try to understand who are really our father and mother, it is the divine father, it is the divine mother who are producing all other children on this earth, right? That is where I had told earlier that when I showed you the picture of Krishna and the Gopika Stris, I told Krishna is the only one husband, all others are wives. All the living beings are wives. Lord is the only husband. That is what is Rasa Leela. So, people don't want to leave their own body even when they are dying, because they are thinking they are leaving out all their family members. Actually, who are our family members? And what is the meaning of these physical relationships as father, mother, brother, sister? Is it really so? Such type of bonding is not there in the animal world and in the bird's world. Even though a cow has a lot of attachment towards the calf when the calf is born, when the calf becomes a bull, the bull will not remember at all who was its mother, who was its father. Actually, they don't know. They don't have a concept. Who is the brother? Who is the sister? They don't know. But human beings, out of this spiritual ignorance, they became attached to more and more of material existence, and they have named so many such relationships among themselves, and they are entangled in the karmic knots. When the human beings are entangled in the karmic knots, now that is what is social Maya. Because of the spiritual ignorance, they kept on thinking about themselves as the material beings only, existence as the physical existence only. Now, even after physical death, they don't want to die. That is called Dehantara. Dehantara means after one body, one more physical body, because people want to have the body again. Now, this is the mental type of reproduction which only human beings are going to have, or always they are having. And that is where in the Prashna Upanishad, when the Kabandhi Katyayana asks Pippalada about from where these people are born, Pippalada says, it is the karmic cycle where they want to come back. They remain as Pitru and they want to come back. When they want to come back, they will again be born as human beings. And that is how the number of human beings keeps on increasing. There's a question here, let me see. When rebirth happens, some can have their previous life's memory. What causes them to recollect this previous life memory? Yes, memory stored where? Partly memory stored in the brain when you are alive. That means when you are having the body. Brain is a receptacle of individual memory. But ultimately, brain is like a seed, let us say. Or, to be precise, brain is not like a seed. In the human body, male body will have a seed, that is semen. Female body will have a seed, that is ovum secretion. So those are the seeds which nature has implanted inside the human beings. Just like the plants and trees have their own seeds inside the fruits, even the male and human bodies have their own seeds, and through those seeds, production happens. Now, that was the nature's memory. Now, let us say in the individual existence, this memory, instead of remaining in the brain, let us say it completely pervades the human existence. From the Annamaya Kosha, let us say the memory transfer to Pranamaya Kosha. And from the Pranamaya Kosha, the memory transfer to Manomaya Kosha. As I have told you earlier, all the 5 koshas or 5 sheaths are connected by means of chakras and nadis. Now, what is basically memory? Memory is the programming of the divine particles, right? Ultimately, there are 3 types of ego called individual ego, natural ego, and universal ego or the divine ego. Now, what is basically memory? Memory is the programming of the particles, right? Inside the brain also, when you say memory, what is memory inside the brain? It is the programming of a neuron, right? Inside the neuron also, what is the basic memory there? It is a chemical memory. It is an affinity between axons, right? So memory is really so subtle. Memory is really so fine. When memory is so fine, even when brain dies, memory can remain. Because what is basically memory? Programming of the particles. Particles can be so small in their existence, right? So that way, the individual memory gets transferred into nature. And that memory remains in nature. Now, the same memory is implanted into another body, right? When the same memory is implanted into another body, when these people have been meditating either in the previous life or if they meditate in the present life, it is possible to recall all that memory. Or if they are artificially induced into a state of trance or a state of dreaming, subconsciously they can speak out whatever is already stored in the memory. It is as if a seed is kept for some time and the seed will wait for the contact with water. Let us say you don't know what this seed is made up of. When you look at a seed, you may not recognize this seed is what type of plant or what type of tree. But let us say the seed comes in contact with water, and when the seed sprouts, then you will know, oh, this was a seed for this particular plant or this particular tree. Which means the seed had that memory imprinted, right? In the same way, even with the human existence, memory remains stored even in Pranamaya Kosha, even in Manomaya Kosha, even in Vijnanamaya Kosha. That is when I told Chitta has multiple dimensions. Now, the same memory is going to be implanted into another body, right? Now, the soul enters into the body through Sahasrara Chakra. I had shown you that picture in the very first set of slides when I was discussing aura. What is soul now? The soul is a divine type of existence. Now, the divine type of existence is carrying this memory. Memory is part of nature as such. Now, nature itself is carrying the memory which a human being was having because of attachment, because of entanglement of the chakras now, right? Now, that memory gets implanted into another physical body. Now, if that person meditates once again, it is possible to recall the memory. Or if the person is induced into a hypnotic trance, then also it is possible to recall the memory. That is what Brian Weiss did. Brian Weiss artificially induced many people into sleep. And in the sleeping state or in the subconscious dreaming state, when he was asking questions, it was actually audible to them because they were not in the completely sleeping state. They were in the semi-state between awakened and sleeping state. So whatever was asked for, it was subconsciously revealed. It is as if a normal person will not tell the truth, but when he is subjected to a narcotic drug or when he is subjected to alcohol drinking, subconsciously he will spell out the truth. In the same way, it is possible to recall the previous life's memory with everyone as such, not just with meditators. With meditators, it is easy for them to recall their previous life's memory because they themselves are trying to reduce their ego and they themselves are tapping from the individual existence to the natural existence, where nature remembers everything. That is why I had told you in the previous session, Yathadhenu Sahasreshu. Remember that particular verse which I had quoted from Chanakya Niti. Yathadhenu Sahasreshu Vatsah Gacchati Mataram Tathayacha Kritam Karma Kartaram Anugacchati. Memory follows. That is where I told Kala Chakra, Kama Chakra, then finally Karma Chakra. When anybody dies, memory should not remain as such. If memory remains, it becomes the mental type of reproduction, and it is possible to recall the memory by means of meditation. With the meditative people, or let us say noble people or humble people or good people. But it is possible to recall this memory from anybody and everybody as such by means of hypnotic trance. That is one thing. And I have mentioned you about Sadhana madam, who is a clairvoyant, who is a channel for an angel. An angel is using her as a channel for a spiritual trance. There also, it is a recall of memory only from nature directly. Now, when people do not know what has happened, people do not know what would have happened, all that is easily revealed there in those sessions. How? because that angel has the ability to tap into the natural memory. Angel is part of natural existence there. That is where all the secrets are there in the Pancha Kosha, in the 5 sheaths. In the 5 sheaths, there are different dimensions of memory. And it is possible to recall all that. But the point here is, if you keep on recalling the previous life's memory, when you will enhance the present life's memory? Point is that if everybody keeps on remembering the previous life's memory, whatever fault you did in the previous life memory, if you remember again in the present life, you will have more and more of guilt over yourself there, right? So many times, forgetfulness is also a boon, which I had mentioned earlier. Not just the memory recall, many times forgetfulness also is a boon. Otherwise, evolution will not happen, liberation will not happen. Think about Sadashiva Brahmendra. He never used to remember everything, even in the physical existence. He was Jivan Mukta. When he was alive also, he was not attached to anything as such. So he was liberated when he was alive also. So it is not necessary that we have to recall our past life memory always. It is not of much benefit as such to recall the previous life's memory. But whenever such things happen, it is an indication that reincarnation has happened. That is a proof. That is where I had told you the examples of reincarnation in my previous presentation. It is that with some people, the memory that is stored gets revealed through the brain itself. Whatever is stored in the Manomaya Kosha or Vijnanamaya Kosha comes into surface through the Pranamaya Kosha, then to the Annamaya Kosha. In general, it happens only during childhood. Only children will have that ability, because children will have very less ego in their young age. When they become older, they will again develop this egoism because of adulthood. Then they will forget everything. So that is how the memory recall is happening. Memory recall itself is a process. It is basically a subconscious process. But it is not necessary that we have to go into that subconscious process and we have to remember everything which we remembered in the previous life. Whatever nature wanted you to remember, that nature itself will somehow make you recall. Okay? That is my message. Whatever God wants you to remember from your previous life, God will somehow make some situations for you to remember if it is helping in evolution. If it is not helping in evolution, then it is better to forget. If at all God wants you to remember, somehow some situation will come in your life where you will be made to remember. That's all. I hope you got the answer. Now from the mental type of reproduction, let me move on to the third or the last type of reproduction called spiritual type of reproduction. We have seen the physical type of reproduction which is happening through bodies. We have seen the mental type of reproduction that is happening only with the case of human beings as rebirth or anuvritti. Now the spiritual type of reproduction is basically evolution or vikasa. And we have the divine memory in the universe, that is chitta, which means God remembers anything and everything, because God himself or God itself is anything and everything. So God is timeless. God is timeless and God creates time. And in God's creation of time, there is this cycle of kala, kama and karma. In the God's time only, the time is having its own cycle, and desires are having their own cycle, and actions are having their own cycle. So God only wanted Udbhija, then Svedaja, then Andaja, then Jarayuja, then Manuja. Now this is the spiritual type of reproduction. In the physical type of reproduction, the same body is going to be born, right? From a bird's egg, bird only is going to be born. From a human womb, human being is only going to be born. That is the physical type of reproduction. In the mental type of reproduction, humans only are getting as souls into human bodies only. Human beings do not get liberated. They are stuck with their bondings, and because of the bondage, even though they are divine souls, they get into the physical bodies once again. In most of the cases, without any personal choice or personal preference, they get into their own families. Only in some cases where if there's a guided reincarnation, they'll be guided into a physical body. Read the life history of Shriyam. Read the life history of Paramahamsa Yogananda. In their cases, it was guided reincarnation. In the sense, who has to be born where, that was decided by their own spiritual masters. But in the other cases, it is simply a natural cycle, naturally happening. In most of the cases, the bound people will be born in their own families again and again, because they are bound to their family only as such, right? They are bound to their own children, their own grandchildren, their own nephews, their own cousins, their own grandfathers, grandmothers, fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters. That is the bondage which human beings have created among themselves, right? In the name of relationships. So they will be born in their own families. That is the family cycle happening there. Now, in reincarnation, there are all these types, either guided reincarnation or general reincarnation as such. In this session, I will not get into all those details because that is still much more complicated subject as such. If you people are interested, later on, let me discuss all that in some other future classes, not in these sessions. Here, the basic understanding is, as long as you understand you are the divine self, gradually you will purify your own memory. When you purify your own memory, you will work out for your liberation, not for reincarnation. Please understand that. You have to work for your liberation, not for your reincarnation. Reincarnation will somehow happen if you don't work for liberation. That's why I had told you, out of dharma, artha, kama, moksha, only dharma, artha, kama is mentioned in the marriage ceremony. Moksha is not mentioned because moksha is always an individual choice. Ultimately, whether we attain liberation or not, at least we should understand what is liberation, right? That was what Adi Shankara's intention also. We don't know when we are going to have a liberation or moksha, but at least we should understand what is liberation and moksha. Only when we understand liberation, moksha, we will gradually don't want to have bondage or bandha. Otherwise, bondage or bandha is naturally happening always with the human beings. Reincarnation, rebirth, anuvritti is happening always with the human being because of bondage only. Now, it will happen naturally when you retain your human type of existence in your memory imprinted. Now, all these false attachments, false bondings, false knowledge is there with you means you will be naturally bound to be born once again. That is called karma chakra, cycle of action and reaction. So that way there can be guided reincarnation also only with the select beings when their spiritual masters are deciding them. And the spiritual masters are not in the physical dimension, they are in the higher dimensions. Such spiritual masters such as Mahavatar Babaji or Lahiri Mahashaya or Maheshwarnath, they are not in the physical dimension, they are not bound, they are not attached to the physical existence. They are beyond. They help their disciples to have a better life. Only then they decide on a particular type of birth, in a particular type of body, in a particular family also. Otherwise, for all other ignorant and arrogant human beings, rebirth is basically a recycling mechanism. By default, that is happening in nature because of the karmic knots. So that way, when we come to the spiritual type of reproduction, the purpose here is evolution or vikasa. From one type to the next type of body to the next type of body. As I've been mentioning, in the physical type of reproduction, it is the same body being born once again. Whereas in the mental type of reproduction, it is the same person being born once again. But maybe with the male body, maybe with the female body. If it is a guided reincarnation, it is in general the same gender. For example, Paramahamsa Yogananda was born male again. Shree was born male again. That was the decision of their spiritual master. Because in their previous life also, they were males only. So, they were implanted into a male body only once again. There was an intervention of a spiritual master. But in the case of the natural type of reincarnation or recycle that is happening, it is not the case of male and female. That male and female is only because of the XX and XY chromosomes that is happening inside the womb. Otherwise, soul is neither male nor female. Soul has no gender at all. Soul is part of the divine which has no gender. When the soul carries the memory of the human being of the previous life, whether it gets into a male body or a female body, it does not matter actually, because the soul has no gender at all. That way, in the case of the normal type of incarnation, the human beings again may be born as a male or may be born as a female. Many times when me and my wife have some arguments, which is generally there in our family, I tell her normally that in your next life, you be born as a male. Then you'll understand the problems of gents. Because in general, always wives will complain on husbands and husbands will complain on wives. So those people who complain on husbands, they should be born in their next life as males. They will understand the problem of males. Now those people who complain on wives, in their next life, they should be born as females. They will understand the problems of female bodies. Now you should not ask me, sir, what about you? I have a psychology like an Ardhanarishwara. Means I understand a male body also, I understand a female body also. Even though right now I am in a male body, I equally understand the pains and the pleasures of the female body as well. That is because of the yogic knowledge, nothing else. It is nothing personal to me. Anybody who gets into the path of yoga, anybody who practices Nadi Shuddhi Pranayama, anybody who practices Saptabindu Dharana, you will gradually understand both the bodies that way equally well. So, as long as males complain on females, in the next life they should be born as females. That may be part of their karma. As long as females blame the males, in their next life females should be born as males. Then they will understand the problems of male bodies also. That should be part of karma. Until lessons are learned, lessons should be repeated, lessons will be repeated. Because nature is what? Nature is basically cycle of life and death. So that is the mental type of reincarnation or mental type of reproduction with the human beings. Now, in the spiritual type of reproduction, there is nothing called male and female. There is nothing called human and non-human. It is only the soul, karna sharira, causal body, and the memory is divine memory, chitta. Chitta is part of Adimaya, the divine mother. And whatever happens anywhere in this universe, in whatever corner, that is remembered. Whatever, whoever does anywhere in this universe, not only on earth, anywhere, whatever is being done or already done, that is remembered. How? Because memory is what? Memory is programming of the divine particles. Basically, memory is what? Programming of the particles. You have already studied about electron. Electron carries a charge. Now, how electron carries a charge? Electron carries a charge because that is universal memory. Why do they say electron carries a charge of 1.6 to 10 power minus 19 coulomb? What is that charge? Which means electron is implanted with the memory of charge itself. So, whose property is that particular charge? Whose property is that electron? Electron is part of the universe everywhere, right? When electron is part of the universe everywhere, when electrons have charge everywhere, that means this natural memory is there everywhere. Now when the particles are charged that way, they are staying like that as entanglements, as karmic knots. And they remain there and they can be recalled by the angelic presence. Even if the angelic presence does not recall all that, nature will anyhow recall whatever is stored, right? So, in this universe, whoever does whatever anywhere, either by thinking or by deed, in whatever way you do, that remains. That is where we should be careful when we speak. We should be careful when we think also. Because even thinking, a repeated thinking is again a memory, right? Whatever you repeatedly think, that retains as memory, right? That is part of karma. Now, if you think noble, then that is satkarma. If you think evil, then that is dushkarma. Choice is again yours. I should repeat once again, all the religions tell only one thing, that is purification of memory, nothing else. So we should be careful about what we think, what we talk, what we act. Because even when we live also, it is memorized. Even when we die also, it gets memorized. Because memory is ultimately charging of the particles, programming of the particles. And particles remain. You have already know the properties of energy. Energy can be converted into mass. Mass can be converted into energy, right? Why did I mention that? To understand this only. Whatever right now we are discussing, to understand this, you should understand the properties of energy. Energy can be converted into mass. Soul is a form of energy that can be converted into mass. Mass again can be converted into energy. The same body will again get converted into soul. But memory remains. Now that is causal body or karana sharira. Now, the beings are the natural beings or prakriti. Now, the evolved beings need not be human beings. Human beings evolve into better beings in the causal body. They can remain as angels for much prolonged time. They can remain as saints in the divine dimension until deluge happens also. When they remain in a timeless state, they can remain that way as long as God wills them to live that way. Now don't ask me what they do. They don't do anything, right? If they do, then again, Kala Chakra, Kama Chakra, Karma Chakra. It is not necessary that they have to do something. It is as such, God is not doing anything. God is making living beings to do many things. As such, God is having a natural cycle, right? Kala Chakra, Kama Chakra, Karma Chakra. And the cycle is going on without God intervening in any of them. God will intervene into all these cycles only when the cycles do not work properly. Otherwise, the cycles are happening in their own fashion. That is what is Adimaya. So that way, the evolved beings can remain as natural beings, as Prakriti, and they can remain as long as there is creation. That means it is Nirantara. See, the first type of reproduction is Kalantara, only during physical life. The second type of reproduction is Dehantara, even after physical death. And the last type of reproduction is Nirantara, as long as there is creation. This cycle keeps on happening, and evolution is the only objective. Evolution is the only purpose in the type of spiritual reproduction. I hope these things are understood. Even though these are slightly complicated, it is better that you try to understand. If you understand, then you will also understand how seriously people should be kaya, vacha, manasa. How seriously people should live with their body, with their speech, with their mind. That is why I keep on repeating the same thing. I have told you about the 5 hidden laws also. Laws at the background. Law of causation, right? Law of causation. Every living being is going to experience its own life with reference to the previous experiences or its own memory that is imprinted, right? So if at all we want to have a better quality of life, we should be careful about what we do with the body, what we do with the speech, what we do with the mind. Because everything gets stored in nature. And people who do not understand this subtle law, they again remain victims of their own doing. Whatever they do with their body, whatever they do with their speech, whatever they do with their mind, they become victims of their own actions, nothing else. Read the Bhagavad Gita thoroughly. That is enough. Let me proceed to the next slide. Now we have 2 choices. I have been telling again and again about yoga and Vedanta. I have been always mentioning about Patanjali and Shankara. Vyasa is a samanvaya of both. Vyasa was a yogi also, Vyasa was a jnani also, both. So Vyasa is above Patanjali and Shankara. Now let us see how this yoga and jnana are related, or how practice and theory are related. Yoga is basically practical, jnana is basically theoretical. Now, yoga is the knowledge by means of physical and mental practices, controlling your body, controlling your mind. Whereas jnana is the knowledge by means of reasoning and inquiry. There is no specific means of controlling the body or controlling the mind in the path of jnana. So jnana is possible only with the controlled mind. Yoga is possible by anybody and everybody for that matter. That is why I discuss Patanjali first, then I discuss Shankara next. In our classes, we approach Patanjali first for 1 year as the junior level, then we approach Shankara next in the senior level. Because jnana is not possible by a unrefined mind. As long as people have selfishness, they cannot understand the divine self. So how to conquer selfishness? It is better to come into yogic path in the beginning by controlling the body and then controlling the mind. Later on, let us have reasoning and inquiry into the divinity. Now in yoga, it is the journey from the individual mind toward the natural mind. Now in jnana, it is the journey from the individual mind toward the universal mind. From the individual mind directly to God. That is universal mind. Whereas in yoga, you will have to control the body, you will have to control the mind. Means from the individual mind, gradually losing the ego, gradually trying to reduce the ego of the individual. That is yoga. But in jnana, there is no question of having the ego at all. If at all you have to understand God, you should not have ego at all. So directly from the individual mind towards the universal mind. That is why Jnana is not possible again by the unrefined mind or immature mind. Now, yoga, aspirant is required to reduce the laziness and increase control. Here, people who are lazy cannot practice asana. People who are lazy cannot practice pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana. So the aspirant is required to reduce laziness and to increase control over the physical and mental apparatus. But in the case of jnana, aspirant is directly required to reduce the ego and increase dispassion or vairagya. The aspirant is supposed to have renunciation or detachment. Only then spiritual knowledge is possible. That is why I again say the path of jnana is not for the normal people, ordinary people, common people. Because normal, common, ordinary people will have enough ego. If they do not want to reduce their ego, they need not approach Vedanta or jnana at all. Even with the yoga also, they may not be able to reduce the ego. Then they are neither into yoga nor into jnana. Now, coming back to yoga, samadhi is the prerequisite for self-realization, because after dharana it is dhyana, after dhyana it is samadhi. It is the prerequisite for self-realization in the case of yoga, because it is more of practical approach. Whereas in the case of jnana, avidya is the hindrance for self-realization. Avidya means not having the knowledge of the self itself is the hindrance for self-realization. When avidya is removed, automatically it becomes vidya. That is where Adi Shankara says, the veil of maya should be removed. The maya or the illusion is covering the self. Once that veil of maya or illusion is removed, the self is already uncovered. So no need of doing anything. No need of dharana, dhyana, samadhi also. No need of practicing anything. The practicing is basically for refinement. If you are already refined, no need of doing anything, because doing anything again results in karma. That way, Adi Shankara is much above Patanjali. But please don't think that I am degrading Patanjali. I am not degrading Patanjali. Patanjali has his own role. Adi Shankara has his own role. But Patanjali's practice is possible by anybody and everybody. Adi Shankara's approach is not possible by everybody. You must be ready for that by birth. Because Adi Shankara himself was ready for that by his birth itself, right? His birth itself. Otherwise, who would ask for a monkhood initiation, a diksha for sannyasa as a young boy? He had brought it from his previous life itself. So it is for only those people who are already having a evolved reincarnation or rebirth, so to say. Already who have brought this knowledge from their previous lives. For them, jnana is directly possible. Because in jnana, avidya itself is the hindrance for self-realization. When avidya is removed, already vidya is there, or self is already there. No need to do anything for the self. Just like Adi Shankara gives an example, if a lamp is burning and around the lamp, if there is this black material, carbon accumulated, and once that carbon is cleaned, that black metal is removed out, if the lamp is totally cleaned, the glow will remain the same. The glow of the fire is the same always. Only thing is, if it is covered by some black material, the glow of the self is not coming out properly. Now, if it is cleaned, then the glow is there intact. So, avidya is the hindrance for self-realization. Lastly, in the case of yoga, dissolution of ego happens by the gradual culturing of the conscious mind. Because it is the conscious mind which is totally attached towards the sense organs, towards the other external bondings or bondage. Now, through the practice of yoga, it is culturing the conscious mind gradually, by means of which ego can be dissolved or samadhi can happen. Samadhi may happen, may not happen. That is again up to the individual. Now, in the case of jnana, dissolution of ego happens by perceiving the divine consciousness, not by culturing the conscious mind. Conscious mind has no role here at all. In the domain of jnana, directly reduce the ego. The aspirant is not supposed to have the ego at all, because basically it is the divine self which is becoming a body. So dissolution of the ego happens by perceiving the divine consciousness which is omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, infinite, divine consciousness. So these are the two domains by means of which self-realization is possible. Our approach has been that yoga is always easy in general. Through yoga we can move on to the domain of jnana. That way the journey can be smooth. Let me continue. Look at this slide where it has been my effort to list out everything as a summary. Now, you can see the first three columns only in the beginning. Later on, let us move on to the next three columns. In the first three columns, when nature produces life, the life force is inside the cells, whether plant cells or animal cells. So cells do not have any individual memory as such. Cells have only natural memory. So they do not have brain also, they do not have ego also, they do not have intellect also. So in the case of cells, it is 100% nature and 0% ego. Now gradually the individualization happens. That means nature individualizes itself into different life forms. So the next life form is plants and worms. Now in the case of worms, there is ego, there is brain. Even in the case of plants, to some extent, there is ego, and that ego is exhibited by nature itself. As a creeper can keep on touching the tree and keep on surrounding the tree, keep on moving around the tree, the creeper has an ego there. I have mentioned about it earlier also, about how plants can also be having the touch sense. So that way, we can say worms and plants have 5% ego and remaining 95% is nature itself. This is just my effort to put this percentage. I really don't know whether it is 5%, 10%, 15, 20, 25. Just to differentiate between the amount of ego which is present with each beings, I have made this table. Of course, I always keep thinking about myself as the channel of the divine. So in whatever way he inspires me within, that way I prepare these slides. So later on, whatever is prepared, I keep on justifying these slides. That's all. Now people need not ask an evidence for this, because earlier people have been asking for evidences for whatever I say. I stopped giving evidences long back. I need not give evidence to anybody as such. You need not ask me a proof for any of these things. If you understand, that is the proof. If you do not understand, you are the proof for your own misunderstanding or wrong understanding or not understanding. As such, for anything and everything, we need not give proof, because proof is for the rational mind. Proof is for the satisfaction of the ego. As I showed in the previous slide, I showed you already, right? Dissolution of the ego happens by perceiving the divine consciousness. Avidya is the hindrance for self-realization. Aspirant is required to reduce ego and increase dispassion. Journey from individual mind towards universal mind. Knowledge by means of reasoning and inquiry, not by asking proof for each and everything. So aspirant is required to reduce ego and increase dispassion. Then only intuition will come out. Intuitive knowledge will be channeled out. So this slide is the result of the intuitive channeling only. This is not for the intellectual people. So that way, you should not ask me the proof for this listing, and I need not give a proof for this listing. So coming back to the discussion, worms and plants, let us say they have only 5% ego and 95% it is nature itself. In the case of cells, there was no ego at all with the cells. It was 100% nature. Now coming to amphibians and fishes, gradually in the water, the worms themselves evolved into fishes gradually, and from water, amphibians started moving out of water on the land like frogs. So in such cases, we can say these fishes have only one more addition of sense organ now. Now, in the case of cells, the faculty is only the growth, means a cell will divide into two, it will become two. Division itself is its multiplication. Cells will keep on growing exponentially. Within a few minutes or in a few hours, one cell can become 2, 2 can become 4, 4 can become 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024, 2048, 4096. It can go on that way. Within a few minutes and a few hours, cells can grow and multiply heavily. That is the faculty of cells. Now, in the case of worms and plants, they have the faculty of taste and touch. Plants have the sense of touch. Worms have the sense of taste as well as touch. Now, when the number of sense organs increase, naturally experiences increase, memory increases. When memory increases, ego increases. So that is how, with the case of amphibians and fishes, they have the faculties of vision and they have the movement now. Earlier, plants never used to move independently. Even the worms used to move independently, not to longer distances. But fishes can move to longer distances. Amphibians can move to longer distances. They can have variety of experiences now. So naturally, when memory increases, ego can be 10% now. Nature is now reduced to 90%. That means the control of nature on the existence is reduced now. In the case of cells, 100% control is that of nature itself. Now, in the case of these beings, slightly a freedom is given now because of the memory, because of the ego. Now, that 10% freedom is that ego itself. Now, in the case of snakes and insects, there is an additional sense, smelling, and they have additional instincts. Insects have their own instincts. Snakes have their own instincts of fighting or flighting. Now that way, because of these added faculties, snakes and insects will have about 85% nature, whereas ego can be increased to another 5% by 15%. Next, it is birds, reptiles and mammals, where still there is one more sense organ added called sound. And now these mammals, birds and reptiles will have their own emotions. They have more and more of bonding for their own offspring, which was not there earlier in the case of snakes or insects or amphibians or fishes or worms. Now mammals are attached to their own offspring or children. Even birds are attached to their own eggs. Reptiles are also attached to their own eggs to some extent. Now that way, memory is increased. When memory is increased, ego is increased. So there is an increased ego to 20%, and the nature's influence now is only 80%. Coming to human beings and apes, they have an additional ability to speak. Humans are differentiated from the other beings by means of speech, skill, and script. Additionally, human beings will have more and more feelings. It is not just instincts, it is not just emotions, it is feelings also. You can see here, it was motions, then came instincts, then emotions, then feelings. Now, because of the increased feelings, increased sensory activity, increased number of experiences, their memory is increased and ego is increased to 25%. and the nature's control is now only 75%. This is where we say conscious mind is around 25%, remaining subconscious mind is around 75%. Actually, 100% is what? Unconscious mind or divinity or God. So this way, human beings have now about 25% of ego, remaining 75% is nature. To give you one more example, whatever you consume as food, whatever you drink as juice or whatever, there you have the freedom. That is that 25%. But how it gets digested inside your stomach, that is nature, 75%. Now nature will decide if it is toxic, you will have vomiting, right? If it goes into intestine, there if it becomes toxic, you will have diarrhea, right? Now that is not under your control. That is nature only. So even now human body is governed 75% by natural laws only. You have the freedom of additional 25%. Now even in the case of a speech or a skill or a script, you have only this 25% of freedom. You should consider it as a divine gift now, right? Now if you misuse this 25% freedom, what is going to happen? You are a victim to your own cycle of karma. So this is how you can see that gradually nature kept on losing out its control and it kept on giving the freedom to the beings. And human beings are supposed to be the best evolved beings out of all the beings. Supposed to be so. Now coming to the fifth column and sixth column. Again we have yoga and jnana. One is the path of practice, one is the path of theory. How do we proceed? Liberation is what? Loss of ego. How loss of ego is possible? 25% has to become 20%, 20% has to become 15, 15 has to become 10, 10 has to become 5, 5 has to become 0. Now people who have developed the ego like this, they have to reduce the ego. Now, funnily I should tell you, in general I have written it as 25% ego and 75% nature. Now there may be people on this earth who have exceeded this limit also. They would have gone up to 30% ego and 70% nature, or 35% ego and 65% nature. We don't know. Because it is very easy to increase the ego, right? Increasing the ego is part of social maya here, right? Even though natural maya gave you only 25% ego, people can build up another 25% ego also. And they can spoil their body that way, right? Just think about this percentage now. If 25 increases to 30, 75 has to reduce to 70. If it goes on like this, let us say this ego becomes 50, what will happen to nature? It will become only 50. That means nature will have only 50% control. Because the other 50% is ego itself. Which means what? Which means body will become sick, mind will become sick again. In the previous cases you can see which are more healthy. You come from bottom to top. Which are more healthy? Cells are most healthy. Why? Cells are completely healthy. Why? Because cells are ruled by nature only 100%. When it comes to worms and plants, they will lose 5% health. Amphibians and fishes, 10% health. Snakes and insects, 15% health. Mammals, birds and reptiles, 20% health. Humans and apes would have lost 25% health. Because the 25% health is what? Basically, why people lose their health? By doing something which is not supposed to be done, right? Why do you lose your physical health? Because you do something which you are not supposed to do. Why do you lose your mental health? Because you do something which you are not supposed to do. You consume something which you are not supposed to consume. Then you lose your physical health. You think something which you are not supposed to think. Then you lose your mental health. Now think about the people who increase their ego further, they are actually losing that much of health physically and mentally. That is the law of karma working right now with them, right? Karma need not wait till next life. Karma can work right now. Karma can work from today to tomorrow, tomorrow to day after tomorrow. Because who is increasing the ego? Whoever is increasing the ego, they will be losing that much percentage of health by themselves consciously, right? Because ego is conscious, nature is subconscious. Now, how to reduce the ego? The very first requirement to reduce the ego, either through yoga or through jnana, is develop humility. Develop humility. Develop dedication. Develop commitment. Develop vinaya. In Sanskrit, we call it as vinaya. If you want to reduce your ego, if you want to have a better health, develop humility. Respect the spiritual teachings. Respect the spiritual masters. Respect your own body. Respect your own mind. Respect the holy scriptures. Develop at least that much of humility, which is possible by anybody and everybody, whether it is educated or uneducated, poor or rich or male or female, whether it is a Farsi or a Jain or a Sikh or a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew, whoever it is possible to develop humility, right? Now, if people want to have physical health and mental health, they should develop humility. That is the secret of health. That is the secret of spiritual health. Most of the saints, most of the monks, most of the divine masters, they remain perfectly healthy, physically healthy, mentally healthy. How? Reduce the ego, become more and more of nature itself. Adimaya takes care of you. Divine Mother takes care of the body. She has been taking care of all other living beings. In Kannada, there is a beautiful poem, Kirtana, which says, 14 ಲೋಕಗಳನ್ನಾಳುವ ತಂದೆಗೆ ಮುದದಿಂದ ನಾನೊಬ್ಬ ಭಾರವಾದೇನೆ. When the Lord is taking care of the 14 realms, Bhuhu, Bhuvaha, Suvaha, Mahaha, Janaha, Tapaha, Satya, 7, then Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Rasatala, Talatala, Mahatala, Patala, another 7, totally 14 realms, 14 dimensions. And Lord can take care of the 14 dimensions, 14 realms, 14 lokas. Will I be a wait for him? 14 ಲೋಕಗಳನ್ನಾಳುವ ತಂದೆಗೆ ಮೊದದಿಂದ ನಾನೊಬ್ಬ ಭಾರವಾದೇನೆ. When the Lord is taking care of the whole universe with 14 realms, will he leave me that way? Will I be a burden for him? No. Now, why people don't develop this humility? Because they think life is theirs. Because they think everything belongs to them. Because they think whatever they want to do, they can do. That is where people are wrong. So the first and the foremost quality to have a loss of ego, if at all people want to have health, they should reduce the ego. Otherwise, this 25 become 30, 30 become 35, they will become sick gradually. Over a period of time, they will become psychopaths. That's what is happening. My friend Gopi asked me about serial killers, right? What are the serial killers? The serial killers are byproduct of the sick society. They became like that because they were not cultured in their childhood. They were not educated properly in their childhood. Human beings became worse than animals. They turned out to be serial killers also, psychopaths also. Why? Ego kept on increasing and nature's control over the individual got reduced. That is the misusing of the freedom given. And only the serial killers or the terrorists need not be blamed for that. Partly, it is a karma of samashti, means Some groups created such miscreants there. Now there is a need of spiritual education so as to have spiritual health. So first and foremost, everybody and anybody should develop humility. Humility, Vinaya. After this, other things are possible. See, initially there must be humility to learn, humility to change, humility to adapt, humility to respect, humility to live like a human being. Then gradually you get into the path of yoga or you get into the path of jnana. In the path of yoga, you can further reduce the ego by following yama and niyama. Further, you can reduce the ego by means of asana and pranayama. Further, you can reduce the ego by means of pratyahara and dharana. You can further reduce the ego by means of dhyana. Next, dhyanam, nirvishayam manaha. When you completely reduce the ego, you become 0% ego, 100% nature. Then that is samadhi. Complete egolessness, that is samadhi. This is the path of yoga. Now coming to the path of jnana, as mentioned by Adi Shankara, from Vinaya gradually move on to bhakti. I have told you about 9 types of bhakti, I suppose, or else I'll tell you now also. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Shambhoho, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Shambhoho, Smaranam. You listen about God and you sing about God. Then you memorize about God. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Shambhoho, Smaranam. Padasevanam, you worship God. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Shambhoho, Smaranam, Padasevanam. Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam. Archanam, you start keeping on doing all those activities which are partly towards God. Vandanam, keep on saluting God daily. Keep on having prostrations to God daily. Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, become a servant of God. Don't think that you have any other master. The true master is the universal master. We are all his servants. Think that you are his servant. Keep on doing your work to please the ultimate boss. That has been my thinking always. My ultimate boss is the boss of the universe. Whatever I do to satisfy my ultimate boss. He is the boss of the universe. I am his servant. Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam. Be friendly with God. Consider God as your friend because he is available to you always. You talk to him through your speech. He will communicate back through his silence. You will receive his answer always, which has been my experience. So, the best friend for you is always with you, around you. He is the universal friend. Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam. If at all you have to confess yourself or tell about yourself to anybody, always communicate with God only for everything and anything. That is where Vijay Vithala Dasa told, 14 ಲೋಕಗಳನ್ನಾಳುವ ತಂದೆಗೆ ಮುದದಿಂದ ನಾನೊಬ್ಬ ಭಾರವಾದೇನೆ. For the Lord who can manage 14 realms, am I a burden to him? No, absolutely no. So that way, develop bhakti or devotion. That is called Navavidha Bhakti. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Shambho Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam. These are called 9 types of bhakti. Develop devotion towards God. Then your ego will be reduced. There is one more beautiful poem written by the same Vijay Vithala Dasa. He says, I am trying to recall, ಕೊಡುವವನು ನೀನು ಕೊಂಬುವವನು ನಾನು ಬಡಮನದ ಮನುಜನ ಬೇಡಿ ಫಲವೇನು. O God, you are the giver. O God, I am the taker. Why will I beg a poor man? because any man is a poor man. Badamanada manujana bedi phalavenu. O God, you are the giver to the universe, you are the giver to the nature. When I am the taker from you, why will I beg to any other poor human beings? Even though human beings are wealthy, they are basically poor in their mind. This is what Vijay Vithala Dasa says. And they have called themselves as Dasa, Purandara Dasa, Kanaka Dasa, Vijay Vithala Dasa. Dasa means servant. They consider themselves as servants of God. That is one type of bhakti itself. So, if at all you have to lose ego through jnana, first it is humility or vinaya, then it is bhakti, then it is viveka. Nitya, anitya, vastu viveka. What is permanent, what is temporary, that knowledge should be gained by the aspirant. Next, vairagya. Iha, amutra, phalabhoga, viraga. Let me not get anything either here nor there, anywhere. Let me keep doing only to please my ultimate boss. Let there not be any return for me in any way. Because whenever we expect something in return, that is where the karma chakra happens, kama chakra happens, right? Cycle of desire and cycle of activity happens, right? So why should I have that expectation or selfishness for whatever we do always? This is the problem with the ignorant human beings. They will always expect something in return for whatever they do. If they keep on expecting something in return for whatever they do, then the fundamental question is, why should they do that? Anybody who does everything only for some return or expectation, then the point is, why should they get stuck up in their own cycle of karma? Why should they do that? It is better, let them not do anything. That is where Adi Shankara says, Iha amutra phalabhoga viraga. Let me not get anything here or anywhere for any of my doings. Because I am not doing anything for something that is going to be coming back in return. That is going to end up in karma only. That is again for the loss of ego now. Now, next one is Shat Sampatti, Shama, Dama, Titiksha, Uparati, Shraddha, Samadhana. I have told you, I will not get into those details in these sessions. You will have to read Viveka Chudamani, you will have to read Upadesha Sahasri, you will have to read Atma Bodha, you will have to read Aparokshanubhuti, you will have to read Prabodha Sudhakara to understand the speciality of Shat Sampatti. Lastly, Mumukshatva, complete egolessness, is having a deeper desire to liberate. There must be a deeper desire to lose the ego itself. See, losing the ego is by means of ego only. That is what is Mumukshatva. So one is a practical approach, one is a theoretical approach. For whatever approach you are fit for, you can decide, you can proceed. That is the choice given to you by God Himself. So there is a question here again. Can you please explain the increase in population, that is multiplication of souls? It is not multiplication of souls. It is each individual human being does not want to die. When they do not want to die, they want to be born once again, right? When they want to be born once again, they are attached to their own families, right? So that soul, when it leaves the body, will be around the family only. Around the family only, waiting for one more body to be happening in the family. And for one more body to happen in the family, the soul itself will induce desires with the people, with the same family members, to have more and more children. When they want to have more and more children, more and more people will be born, and the same family members will keep on recycling with more and more number of lives. So human beings who die, they do not attain liberation or salvation because they are born once again. And that is how human population is increasing, because nobody wants to liberate as such. That is the basic cause for increase in human population, where nobody wants to have moksha. Everybody wants to have one more janma, that too preferably in their own families once again. So that is how the law of karma, karmic cycle increases, karmic bondage increases, karmic knots increase. That is the answer. Why human beings are increasing their population? This is the basic reason. So reincarnation or rebirth is not natural, it is unnatural. In the sense, in nature, everything that dies will not be born again. Only human beings are born again because they want to be born again, because they are attached to this physical existence in their own way. Again, because of their attachment, sanchita, prarabdha, agami karma. I did, I do, I will keep doing. If this mentality remains in this way, I did yesterday this thing, I did today, I do today this thing, and tomorrow I will be doing this thing. If this is the mentality that is going to happen, for whatever I do, I expect again in return. If this keeps happening, then the memory is entangled in the law of karma. Always there is an expectation to gain something out of this physical life. As long as there is an expectation to gain something out of the physical life, again there is a bondage with the family, with the properties, with whatever there is physical. Sometimes whatever there is mental, like 6 enemies and 8 arrogances. As long as this is bound that way, this is again because of the ignorance, and because of the ignorance, as long as people remain ignorant, they are the slaves of their own memory. And memory remains after physical death. Memory remains with the soul. And the soul wants to have one more human body. And people keep on increasing that way. That is the basic cause for increase in human population. It is not that out of some sexual freedom. For example, in the other birds and animals or in other living beings, there is a season for sexual activity. But with the human beings, there is no specific season for sexual activity. On the outset, initially it seems as if because they have no season for sexual activity, the number is increasing. Actually, it is not that way. It is not that way. Because there are other beings also who do not have season for sex. But still, their numbers do not increase. Human beings' numbers increase because the dissatisfied souls, or the earthbound souls, I should say, earthbound souls, the egoistic souls, they want to have one more physical body, preferably in their own families. That is where they induce more and more desires into the same family so as to have more production. You can see that very noble people will have very less children. You can observe this in society. Very noble, virtuous people will have less number of children. Very materialistic and selfish and arrogant people will have more number of children. Why is it so? Now you may say that noble people do not want to produce more children, whereas other people, they have no other job to do other than producing children. It is not that way also. It is not that way. It is the desire which is induced. Now, as I told you, subconsciously desire can be induced by the earthbound souls or by the dissatisfied souls also. The departed family members can also induce such desires within the family members to have more and more children. And that is how the cycle of karma continues. Okay. Today it is already 9:10. Let me stop this session for today. Tomorrow is Thursday, so see you on Friday. Until then, take care and goodbye. Let me see how many participants are there listening to me, just for my satisfaction of the ego, because even I have slight amount of ego when I conduct this session. Okay, see you on Friday.